Good morning, Cherie Hansen here on a beautiful sunny day that promises to go up to 40. Yay! I just want to kindly ask you to subscribe to my YouTube video. What I attempt to do on YouTube is to share information that might be helpful and might make life a little easier, and also I'm posting my blogs that you can also read with your eyes reading on cheriehansen.com, which has 75,000 subscribers at the moment. This is from The Art of Communicating by Thich, Nhat, and we're into reconciling in families. I'm sure this is very, very useful for most of us. Sometimes communication is hardest in our own families because families share similar suffering and ways of responding to suffering. The suffering of your parents was passed down from their parents and from their ancestors before them. Unless you begin to understand your own suffering and reconcile with yourself, that suffering will continue to be passed down to the next generation. So we do the work of mindful communication, not just for ourselves and our loved ones, but for our descendants. Understanding your own suffering, you understand the suffering of your father. Your father may have had a lot of suffering and been unable to handle and transform the suffering. So he transmitted the whole mass of suffering to you. You inherit this suffering from him and from your mother. When we're still young, many of us are determined to be different from our parents. We say we'll never make our children suffer. But when we grow up, we tend to behave just like our parents, and we make others suffer because, like our ancestors, we don't know how to handle the energies that we have inherited. We've received many positive and negative seeds from our parents and ancestors. They transmitted their habit to us because they didn't know how to transform it. Sometimes these habits generate energy have passed down through many generations. You have to recognize that you are the continuation of your father, mother, and ancestors. Cultivate mindfulness so you can recognize the habit energies each time it arises and embrace it with your energy of mindfulness. Each time we're able to do this, the habit energy becomes weaker. If we keep practicing like this, we can stop the cycle of transmission, and this will benefit not only us, but our children and our descendants. We can also help our children learn how to handle their habit energies and nourish the positive elements they have inside. The suffering we receive from our parents when we were children is probably our deepest suffering. We may hate our parents and feel that whether or not they are still living, we will never reconcile with them. Yet with our practice of breathing mindfully, walking mindfully, and looking deeply, we can bring about transformation and restore communication in even the most difficult of families. If the other person also practiced mindful awareness, it's much easier. But reconciliation is possible even if the other person doesn't know about the practice. Relationships with parents and siblings can be particularly difficult. Maybe during their childhood they were deeply wounded and no one listened to them. So now they are perpetuating the cycle and they don't want to listen to anyone. Don't ask your family members to change. When you're able to generate the energy of understanding and compassion in yourself, reconciliation can begin to take place. I still remember a retreat in Oldenburg in northern Germany. On the fourth day of the retreat, I gave everyone a midnight deadline to begin reconciling with somebody with whom they had had great difficulty. The next morning, one man came to me and said, "I've been so angry at my father for years. I couldn't even look at him. Even when I dialed his number last night, I doubted I could talk to him calmly." But when he heard his father's voice, he found that he naturally used loving speech. He didn't even have to try. He said, "I know you've suffered a lot during the past many years. I'm sorry. I know I've acted and spoken in a way that didn't help. I didn't mean to make you suffer." His father heard the compassion in his son's voice and told him for the first time about his suffering and his difficulties. Reconciliation is possible. You can find resolution to the difficulties in your relationships. You don't need to allow the difficulties to continue, causing you to suffer month after month, year after year. The first step is to practice mindful breathing, mindful walking, and mindfulness in daily activities, so you will be strong enough to go back to yourself. Listen to your own suffering and look deeply into its nature. Unless we listen to our own suffering, there's no chance of improving the quality of our relationships. With mindfulness, compassion arises, and you can accept yourself. Then you have the chance to look at others. Even if they are not there with you, you can still sit, close your eyes, and see the suffering they have gone through for so many years. When you can see the suffering in others, you begin to understand that there is a reason they suffer like that. You are no longer angry with them anymore. Compassion will arise in your heart. When compassion is born, you are more peaceful. Your mind is clearer, and you will be motivated to say or do something to help others transform their difficulties. Reconciliation becomes possible. And this is the beauty of his practice, is to constantly go back to yourself. What I tell my clients is I ask them to take a deep breath in and check their bodies. What's going on in your body? Where are you holding the pain? What's the story that you are letting run your life? And frequently we know from scientific research that it's inherited trauma, that the suffering is passed down generation after generation. And Thich Nhat Hanh and his Buddhist practice was very aware of how the trauma is cycling out through every new generation. So how do we stop it? We stop it here, when we come home to our own body, and we come home to our own suffering, and we begin to look at it so that we can transform it. It takes courage, it takes dedication, and it takes mindfulness. But what a wonderful thing to be able to clear out your family pain, and by going into your own body and your own pain. Thank you. Please do come subscribe to my videos.